So I'll start the recording again. Thank you guys. Thanks for rejoining. So before we close, we discussed the Azure firewall. Now we are going to discuss the Azure DDoS protection. DDoS protection, it is a buzzword in the security always. What actually this means, like when you have either on-premises or public cloud, the Azure cloud, any application hosted here is can be accessed outside of the network. It could be like outside of the cloud or outside of the on-premises. If any attackers are trying to attack your application, if that is coming in a large workloads or trying to attack your network, like they are flooding to request to your network, this Azure DDoS production can monitor those kind of attacks, and it can immediately take the action against that. It can also send you the notifications. You can take action against that. It's just more of like outside of your network, unsuspicious activities somebody is trying to do. Then you can use this kind of, if you're enabling this Azure DDoS production, this can help you to prevent some of the large flooded networks. Like when the attackers is trying to attack, they will be using some sort of like a scheduled job or a running job. They can send millions of requests in the same time. When they are sending millions of requests to your application, if you just imagine, like you have a small application, small configuration, you know that only 100 people daily is going to use, and it is not just attacking or enforcing some sort of a malicious activity. It is also making your system down. Like for example, bank, some leading bank in UK, they have application. It's a small bank. They know that they have thousands of customers accessing every day. Suddenly, if attackers are sending millions of requests to that application, the application front end will not be able to handle that request, and the system will go down because the capacity is not configured in such a way. So it will be not just a security threat, it's also like taking your system to down. Because of that, you are losing customer access, your company reputation is going. So all this also can happen outside of your security. So Azure, when you're getting into Azure subscription, by default, every subscription will have a DDoS protection basics. But if you want to go into advanced level activity, then you can upgrade from the basic to standard. Standard can give you some of the additional workloads, and you can also leverage this DDoS on various level. Like outside of your public cloud, DDoS protection is default. But if anything you want to implement on a additional layer, additional um, capabilities, then you can upgrade your DDoS protection from basic to standard. So the next topic we'll be discussing the network security group. I think pretty much most of you now familiar. Um, so if you see in this diagram in the left hand side, I have a Azure Virtual Network. In one subscription, I have some virtual network which has as two subnet 1 and subnet 2. In subnet 1, I have three virtual machines. It could be like a web front end, and imagine this is your backend, and it is a SQL server. So from this subnet to this subnet, I don't want all the web front end to discuss. Only limited web front end can talk to this database. So I have a set of rules. Rules can be defined depending on business use case or application use case. So from internet, in this example, from internet, I can talk to my virtual machine 1 and 2, but not 3, which means like I can configure my network security group. It is actually similar to firewall, but it is on the subnet and network interface level. So on the subnet level, I create a NHG, and I'm saying like any inbound to this virtual machine 1 and 2 is allowed, but virtual machine 3 is not allowed. That's why it shows like a green tick box here and X here. Then from these three machines, my backend subnet of my SQL server, I don't want to allow my VM 1 and 2 to talk, but VM 3 can talk. for some reason. So these kind of requirements it's very difficult to manage, but because of this energy rule, like a network security group rule, you can define which one to talk to which layer, and you can control based on this scenario. This is only example, but when you're actually working on application, you will have a variety of scenarios where you need to control the um, connectivity from one machine to another machine. You can always use network security group. So the network security group you can configure, and you can also prioritize. This can start from 100 to 4096. Always the lower number will be picked up first, because you are going to create a multiple rule, which rule to pass first. So it will keep on moving to higher number. And you can also use source and destination. You can say from VM1, like in this energy group, I'll say inbound rule VM1, it's my source, and destination VM4 is not allowed, it's denied. Then I can create another rule, say VM3 IP address, source IP, target is VM4 IP, is actually allowed. So you can create those rules based on the IP address and the port and the protocols also. You can configure TCP, UDP, and you can configure both way. The same way you can also configure allowed or denied. So quickly we'll have some sample demo and how it going to work on the network security group. So before moving into this final, let's talk about, let's see the demo first. Okay, so now I'm going to my home. I have some sample resource group. Like I have a resource group SQL UKS, which has a one virtual network, one subnet. Within that subnet, I have one SQL VM and VM level network interface. I have one NSG group. So this VM currently I can access. Let me show you this. So I have created a SQL VM from my local SQL Studio Manager. I can talk to the cloud. So if I say database engine, so let me see what is my SQL Server IP. So my IP is 51.105.32.250, and this can basically, like, from my virtual subnet, and I go to my network. Sorry, SQL VM networking. Yeah, so I have the network interface card. The network interface level, I have my energy network security group configured. So here I can see my access from outside of internet to my public cloud, SQL VM, port 1401. This is the port 1401 is actually used for connecting from SQL. So if I'm trying to connect to my SQL server, I will be using port 1401. This is currently says allowed. So it says allowed, and I'm going to see here. So this is my SQL server IP, and I'm sending the port that I'm trying to connect from SQL Server Management Studio. So if I entered my SQL user ID and password, I'm trying to connect, it says connected, which means my network security group here, it says allowed. Now we are going to disconnect this and say this settings currently we wanted to deny. So currently it says allowed 1401. I'm going to say deny now and save it. So updated security rules. Now I go back to my same SQL Server Management Studio. I'm trying to connect database engine. So same IP, same port, user ID and password. This time it is trying to talk to my Azure SQL. Previously it is connected immediately. Now it is keep on trying. Okay, something when it's trying to talk to my Azure SQL, it found it reaches to my IP, the actual server name and the port. Now it is not getting the response from there because somebody is blocking the block. In this example, we are blocking by a network security group. So now it says like it is blocked. It is not allowed to connect. So this one way of blocking your access to your resources. So this port 1401, pretty much like if you have a SQL server in Azure, you want to connect from SQL Server Management Studio, then 1401 is used. So another one, most of you familiar like RDP, remote desktop. If I can also connect to my SQL Server machine by doing the remote desktop connectivity. So this one, now I know my IP address of my SQL Server, and I'm trying to connect, and I'm going to enter my password. So it says, okay, you are allowed to connect. Actually, now I'm connected to my SQL Server machine. Okay, it's great. I can do the remote desktop to my SQL Server. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to close this, and now you can see here RDP TCP/IP 3389 is for the RDP remote desktop. So this, if I deny, same results we are expecting. Now we are blocking. So 1401 is allowed, but 3389 is not allowed. Okay, now I'm going to the remote desktop. Same thing, connect. So now it's blocked. So I cannot do the remote desktop, but I can connect from my SQL Server Management Studio another port. So you can block by the port, you can block by the protocol, and the source and destination you can configure. So I think pretty much when you want to create a new rules, if you see this, you will be configuring source from from anywhere. Like if I'm, because I'm in the Azure cloud, I'm saying like if someone coming from this IP address, I want to block it, then I can go to the specific IP address. Or if I want to block anyone connecting to RDP, I can say any. Then you say destination, because this is applied on a network security group level. Any destination is blocked, or any destination allowed. Or you can say IP address level. For example, we saw the other example, right? One VM to another VM, you want to configure allow or deny. You can say IP address of your source, IP address of your destination, and you can say allow or deny. This is how you configure network security group. Now we'll move into our final screen. So this gives you some of the example. So we discussed DDoS protection. Anyone coming from internet, how they are trying to attack our system. So you can have a DMC. It's outside of your virtual private network, where you can control your DDoS protection, and you can have Azure firewalls. And once you cross the Azure firewall, then you get into your application. So before coming to your application configured in these subnets, you also have a firewalls, and then application external load balancer. We also saw the Azure application gateway, right? So this is used for applications where you can use application gateway as a web application firewall. It also can allow deny based on the rules. Once you cross all of these, then you reach to your subnet. But in the subnet level, we also have a network security group. So this overall picture is giving us the set of security controls where we need to apply and how we need to apply. And the other slide we saw in-depth strategy. So this defense in depth, it is now, I hope all of you are clear now what this defense in depth means, and on each layer, how are we managing our security threats, and what are the components available in Azure, how it is helping us. we covered today. Most of you would are familiar now, and I suggest you all can remember these layers and try to see in each layer what kind of Azure functions are available and how those Azure functionalities are helping you, and sometime same kind of protection available for data or application level, but each and every layer has their own benefit and their own reason. That based on the industry demand, Azure is keep investing on creating a new products which can apply to the each and every layer. So I think whatever we planned today, we discussed. I think one item missed it, which is yeah. So we discuss security center, Sentinel, Key Vault, dedicated host. We missed it. Firewall, DDoS protection, and network security group. We have discussed. Azure dedicated host is nothing but um, we discussed, right? Like in on-premises, we have a physical server for a set of needs. Then we can create a dedicated physical server, and we can also deploy our virtual machine into a dedicated physical server. But whereas in public cloud, it is not allowing you to choose dedicated host because it is using virtualized technology. Microsoft will manage where your VMs should go and stay, but you can select which availability zone you want, which availability set you want, you can decide, but you cannot decide which VM, like which physical server you want to host. But the new feature called Azure Dedicated Host is actually allowing you to choose your virtual machine. If you wanted to use a dedicated host, you can select a dedicated host and configure your virtual machines. This functionality introduced only because many organizations, they have a set of complaints and complaints reason they wanted to make sure their data is not shared by other machines. Technically, you have seen every layer level we have a security protection. So if you have security protection, obviously the public cloud shared tenant already a protected network. But some organization they don't want to go by this word or by this control. Still, they wanted to be saying like my lawyer says, my complaint says, I need to have a dedicated host. Then those kind of requirements to satisfy it, Microsoft introduced dedicated host. So if you wanted to host your VM on a dedicated physical server, now you have the option. So I think we covered all of this topic today, and we also seen this. I hope you all will be remembering the in-depth layer of physical server to database and how this connectivity works, each layer level security components. I hope you enjoyed the session today, and I request everyone to visit the YouTube channel and subscribe. That will help to know like how many people are following, and we can keep improving. Right now we are not a media company. This we are doing as a community service, and whatever we are recording here, we are just uploading to a YouTube channel. And obviously compared to any other YouTube video, this will not be a, graphically better, but we don't want to invest time on that now. We want to invest time on the key information. So our investment is to understand the Azure and help you guys to understand. So we are only aiming that level. So obviously our request to you, please subscribe our YouTube channel, me and my architecture, and please join our MK Azure user group, LinkedIn group. This will help us to know like how many people are following and how, what kind of need they have. If you have any request, you can come to our Azure user group in LinkedIn group, and you can post your messages, what kind of need you have, then we can help you. Thank you guys. I think hope you all enjoyed this today's session.
Yeah, Karthik, one query. This Azure dedicated host, when you said, would it compromise the other features of cloud, like elasticity or your like what is what are the features what we had for when we move into cloud? This dedicated host will have impact, or
not as a big scale, like obviously like some level of limitations are there, but because you know that cloud is even the physical server, it can be elastic physical server can be offered by Microsoft. So obviously they will be trying to cover all of this, but at this stage, I'm not aware of any limitation, but if I found any, definitely I will mention that in the next session.
Yeah. Thanks, Karthik.
Karthik, one more question. What's the difference between the Azure firewall and the firewall Form 2? In your architecture diagram, you just mentioned there are two things, right?
Yeah, so you can have a single Azure firewall. This is the Azure firewall as a platform as a service component. But sometimes organization can use their physical network virtual appliance. So they have a, like for example, Barracuda, um, CenturyLink, and there are various industry products. They have a physical appliance you can buy from third party, but you put it in your DMZ zone in Azure. That virtual network virtual appliance can sit here. It can be highly available. In this scenario, they can have a highly available virtual appliance configured here. So it is similar, but this is offered by Azure out of the box. You can get this feature, but if you want to use network virtual appliance, you can configure here. I will give you one example if you can.
Yeah, that makes sense, Karthik.
Yeah.
I'm clear with it. And one more question. And for Web3, you're just calling directly the subnet, isn't it? Without the firewall.
Sorry, 1 minute. I didn't follow. Sorry, say it again.
In Web3,
Yeah.
we're just trying to hit without firewall, correct?
Yes, we don't have the firewall here. This is actually 4 different scenario, right? So
Yes.
scenario 1, this virtual IP address from any internet directly coming to this IP. This IP actually going to pass via this firewall. But here we are actually using load balancer, and the load balancer actually sending to which firewall is available. It could be a network virtual appliance. Under this scenario, if you see this symbol, it is Azure Application Gateway. So this Azure Application Gateway is one of the scenario to replace Azure Firewall. You can also use Azure Application Gateway. Application Gateway has a 2 flavor. One is simple Azure Application Gateway, which can act as a firewall. The other one, Web Application Firewall. So this Web Application Firewall, if you have a Web Application here, you want to do some reverse proxy here to block any unwanted request, allow, deny, you can use Azure Application Gateway level Web Application Firewall. That's why this picture is trying to show scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, and scenario 4. And this is in scenario 5. Any on-premises network can talk to your Azure VPN gateway. From here, they can get into your request if you have a trusted network between these companies. So this trying to show 5 different scenarios.
Okay, in that case, the
Yeah.
first WIP1 and WIP3, you mean to say like the security is not compromised at all?
Yes.
Because first one, we're using Azure Firewall, and the
Yeah.
last one, we're just using WAF, which is Web Application Firewall. So which is again going to do the same purpose, correct?
Yes, each and that's why I mentioned, right? It is dependent on the purpose. So if your purpose is to, so obviously before coming to any network, DDoS protection is covered. If you remember the layers we talk about, apart from the layer, it is depend on your demand, because each and every component in cloud has their own price, right? The depend on the price match you want to use. Why do you want to use advanced functionality when you wanted a very minimal functionality for your, if you wanted application level firewall, then you can simply use web application firewall. You don't need a large investment on Azure firewall. The cost for Azure firewall obviously higher than the application gateway, but obviously this will have a pros and cons functionality. If your functionality is only to satisfy your web application, like Azure PaaS services, then you need only gateway. But if you have a application hosted in a virtual machine and that is sitting in multiple virtual network, then you need a Azure firewall. So it's depend on the scenario you will use.
Okay.
It makes sense.
Clear, Karthik. Yeah, clear. Thank you so much.
Okay. So these are the companies has a network virtual appliance. I think in your organization, maybe you use one of these components. I think F5 very popular in UK,
Yeah,
Fortinet,
F5 in the file.
Aragota, Citrix, Cisco, Checkpoint. So these are the companies pretty much I worked on. Personally, I know NetApps, but some of the products I'm not familiar. Like the current customer where I'm helping, they have variety of applications, not only one single product. They have multiple product. So every organization has their own set of standards, and they will have a different style of using these network virtual appliances. Okay,
Good.
I think
Thanks, Karthik.
thank you. Any other question, guys?
Thanks,
Okay,
Karthik. It was
thank
quite
you. No
interesting.
problem.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
I think sorry, somebody say,
thank you.
say?
I
Okay.
said thank you. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, great. So I think we finished part four, and 5 and 6. If it is not a huge topic to cover, probably I'll combine next week 5 and 6 together. Otherwise, we will have a separate session. But as per my high level knowledge, I will be combining 5 and 6 because it's not a huge topic to cover. But at least today, actually, when I started this, I was thinking to cover 4, 5, 6 together. But when I started knowing the new syllabus has a variety of topic, so that's why I couldn't combine everything. But um, our aim not to dump many things on your head. So slowly we will give you small features and functionalities. So today we were not aiming to cross more than 40 minutes, but unfortunately some of the time it crosses. But obviously in the next session we will try to minimize that, and we'll get into more hands-on, because the theoretical you can always learn in internet. You don't need a session to explain you, but sometime we need a combination of theory as well as practical. So our aim is to cover more practical. So from upcoming weeks we will focus on that. Thank you, guys.